There's been a lot of talk about art in video games, and the role of the artist trapped in this system. Those who work on these massive productions and how they're treated by those in charge. And of course, generative AI. How it relates to video games and art as a whole going forward. Tool or replacement. In an industry built upon using technology to generate the contents of the game.
A fish is created as almost like a silhouette by our artists, and then the code basically mutates and changes that.
Where is it acceptable to use an AI model to assist in that process? I'm not going to pretend to be anything I'm not here. I'm not a game developer, I'm not an expert in this field. Hell, some people would probably say I'm barely a writer, but I do write some things. And I do play a lot of games, and I was struck immediately when playing the Alan Wake 2 expansion, The Lakehouse. Now, I know it's not its own whole game, but I feel as though it's standalone enough where I hopefully won't have to go through too much stuff to really get into the meat of it. And the way that it discusses generative AI from the artist's perspective, how it calls out an industry that treats its artists like dirt. Especially from a game studio so focused on art and the auteur, I think it's just so beautiful and interesting. Plus I haven't seen too many other people talk about it. There are still some, don't get me wrong, but hopefully I can put my own little twist on it. So bear with me briefly while I run down what you're going to need to know before we hop in. And if you already know what's going on, just feel free to skip this bit. Also, minor spoilers for Alan Wake 1 and 2, a little bit of control, not too much control, and of course for the expansion to Alan Wake 2, The Lakehouse. So if at any time you think you are going to be interested in playing this, and genuinely I cannot recommend it more, just stop the video, go play. No, don't stop the video. Keep the video playing, I would like the retention rate, and then come back once you've finished playing The Lakehouse and watch the whole video again. That'd be real good for me, thanks.
Dayman, fighter of the night man, champion of the sun, you're a master of karate and friendship for everyone. Dayman.
So, the game is set in Bright Falls. Turns out, due to some weird altered world shit going on in the local lake, the town has the ability to bring art to life. The titular Alan Wake is currently trapped in the lake, also known as the Dark Place, a dark dimension full of shadows and monsters, and really is just a bad time. We gotta get him out.
I was trapped here. Had been for what felt like years. Outside reality.
And Alan is attempting to write a book that tells the story of his escape from the Dark Place, which he hopes will then be taken by the lake and made real.
The lies had to feel true for them to become true. Had I always written this way?
As he writes, his pages prophesizing, or I guess influencing, future events escape the Dark Place and find their way into the real world, becoming reality.
That was the name I planned to use for the next novel I had never gotten started.
Meanwhile, an agency known as the Federal Bureau of Control is investigating the town and its ability to make art reality. See, it isn't just Alan's art that could be made reality, it's any art. They first investigated the work of Dr. Hartman, who in the first game ran a psychiatric lodge for struggling artists, which was just a front for him trying to get artists to change reality for him. This goes poorly for Hartman. But the FBC are not dissuaded, and instead set up their own facility, the Lakehouse, to expand on Hartman's work and investigate the power of the lake. So that's kind of what you need to know to hop into the DLC, so let's do just that. The expansion doesn't follow any playable character from the original game, and is instead a sidequel of sorts. You play as Kieran Estevez, an agent of the FBC who is investigating the Lakehouse after a bunch of alarms were rung and no one seems to be responding. It's probably fine.
No one wants to check the individual carrying a firearm into a restricted government facility?
Inside, Kieran finds no one. However, an automated video plays introducing you to the two people running the facility. Husband and wife duo, Jules and Diana Marmont. Jules coming across as a bit of a goofball, shown by his fun little video he made.
Always remember the 3 S's. Safety, security, and censorship.
And Diana, a much more direct, straight-to-business kind of person.
It's a C. It's a C.
What? Yeah, that is the joke, Diana.
Well, it's a stupid
Wonderful joke, Jules.
They don't like each other, and hey, that's fair. I don't like them very much either. And I can assure you, by the end of this video, you won't either. It is slowly revealed what their goal is here at the Lakehouse. Study, and maybe even harness, the lake's ability to bring art to life. How they go about this, however, is very different. Remember how I mentioned that Alan's work finds its way into the real world? Well, they find some of these pages and come to two very different conclusions. Jules, ever the theatric and some would say coward,
A coward can't stand risk.
focuses on the artist.
Rudolph, no. You love to paint. And you are such a talent.
Diana, however, looks at art as nothing more than a means to an end. Just a product, not valuing the art for what it is. Art.
The truth was controlled here. The art was not art, just content for the experiment.
And the artists were fighting back. So they get a divorce. No, they don't. That would be the smart thing to do. Instead, they split their team into two, halving their resources and doubling their workloads, both focusing on different elements of the artist's work.
His bullshit pedestrian methodology cannot produce results before mine.
A few moments later.
This is what we have been waiting for. It is the key.
They grew resentful, undermining each other at every turn. They were passive-aggressive, real aggressive.
Selfish harpy or the wife.
Eventually actively working against each other. Jules was hiding resources from Diana, and in return, Diana began sabotaging Jules's experiments. But we'll get to that. First, what were they working on? And how does it relate to real-life artists working today? Both Marmonts looked at art as just a product, but Jules knew that passion and people is what made art art. He considered himself somewhat creative, but nowhere near what they needed for this experiment.
And he made fun of the name. Oh, the shadow. The shadow is good. It's evocative.
However, he also needed the art to serve a purpose. His purpose. And so he took painter Rudolph Lane hostage. Lane, a minor character from Alan Wake 1, was actually a patient of Dr. Hartman.
Rudolph Lane's case is interesting. He was completely blocked, and frankly, I was about to discard him as useless. Once Wake arrived and started writing, something changed in Rudolph. He's producing extraordinary work, increasingly dark pieces. Unfortunately, he doesn't respond to direction at all.
Jules drugged him, never let him rest, forcing him to paint and paint and paint.
The piece of art he needed was hidden inside Lane. If Jules could simply cut the painter open and pull the painting out of him, he would.
But the paintings were nothing. There was no quality, no passion, no care behind it. Just a product forced upon a struggling artist. It's hard not to think about the games industry. The way some developers are treated, crunching, working hours upon hours on someone else's vision, only to benefit greed. Hell, you could expand this to animators, VFX artists forced to work tireless hours for a measly wage compared to what the next Marvel blockbuster is going to make at the box office.
Sometimes there are months where, because of the crunch time, we do not have any time off. And by this I mean no weekends, no holidays, you just work every single day.
And the product is so bland, lacking life, lacking passion. Not for any fault of the hard-working teams, just the conditions they're put in, the time pressure. It's hard to feel creative when a billion-dollar corporation is breathing down your neck. And so the art becomes just a means to an end. And so we expand on it. Without labor laws, without regulation, when powered only by greed and a need for control, what happens to the artist? Jules began to torture Lane, more than he already had been.
Jules would make Lane cooperate. No more drugs. Less carrot, more stick. Jules had to go faster. He wouldn't lose to Diana. Nothing else mattered.
Rudolph was in agony, in so much pain every day. There was barely an ounce of himself left.
No, I hate it. It's just taking from me now. When can I leave? You said you'd let me leave.
But that pain was used by Jules and his team. Emotion breeds passion, and passion is what they needed to access the power of the lake. Eventually, Lane could take no more. His final painting was a self-portrait. No brush, just himself. Murderer and victim. A final masterpiece. Full of rage, full of hate, but for Jules, full of passion.
Lane may be gone, but he left us with a goodbye present.
We'll come back to Jules. For now, we'll move on to Diana. Diana is not like Jules. She doesn't have time for games, for petty bullshit.
Well, it's a stupid fuck.
Wonderful joke, Jules.
She doesn't have time for people. Art is not art, it's
just content.
Put the words in the right order, it will tell a story. A story is what they need to access the lake's powers. Simple as that. Alan's writing is what activates the lake. So therefore, if you can just replicate the way he writes and match his style, just find the right order of words that sound like him and your art is just as good as him, right? And so they try. They take the pages they find, feed it into the algorithm, and try to imitate his work. But it's also superficial. They try to find the model of typewriter he used, the same ink, because that's how you make the art. No thought to creativity, originality, the human experience. No, if we use the same tools and the same words, then we'll make the same art. She misses the fundamental key to the art. The artist. Their ideas. And so Diana and her team go to work. A room with rows of AI-powered typewriters, all attempting to mimic the writing of Alan Wake. The first attempts, rudimentary, broken. Okay, get ready for my best Alan Wake impression. Dark, 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 dark. Flashlight peered into the deep darkness, and the dark shivered. Dark, dark. Trees, 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 trees. Dark, screamed the darkness. A dark reminder of the dark's inner darkness. The rot snail beamed. A wooden grain bent from the owl. Egg mail. Dim, 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 dim. Crow. Crow. And although it eventually branches out into words other than dark, egg mail, and even learns to write in a similar cadence to Wake, there's no structure to it. There's no point, no intent, and it fails. The lake doesn't recognize it as art, because it's not. It's slop. It reminds me of this old Game Grumps bit.
Chris told me this, Chris O'Neill, Oni-NG.
Yo, Oni.
He told me this story of when he was in, like, I don't know, elementary school or something. Mm-hmm. And I guess in one of his classes, the teacher asked the class to write jokes. Mm-hmm. And they didn't really even know what jokes, like, were, or, like, how to structure a joke or whatever. He started noticing that there was, like, a pattern to the jokes.
Right.
That everyone was like, ba-da-ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da. Banana! And everyone's like, ah!
Right.
So he just goes up and they're like, all right, what's the joke? And he goes, what's the difference between a moodle and a banoodle? Skamoodle!
Generative AI works in pretty much exactly the same way. It takes all info at face value. It can't put meaning into any character, any phrase, any word. It just spits out info without ever being able to understand or interpret the information. When ChatGPT was first getting big, I was testing it out with a few co-workers. This was before I knew all of the terrible things going on with AI. We were all curious, okay? Seeing what it could do and what it couldn't. And I asked it to come up with a few puns about video games. And it came back to me with words that, when put together, have the same sound or cadence to a joke, but had no substance. What do you call a mix between a kangaroo and a video game character? Jumpman from Donkey Kong. What do you call a video game character in a hurry? Sonic the Hedge Rush. What do you call a video game character with no job? Unemployed Mario. Get it? Because he's unemployed and he's a video game. And all of these jokes are hilarious. I was cackling at my desk. But not for the reason that they're meant to be funny. They don't make sense. Because it knows what a joke sounds like, but can't make any real connections as to why something might be funny.
I can't believe Josh said lay pipe and acquiesce in the same sentence. I don't even know what that word means.
You never read the dictionary, horny?
It doesn't know what the meaning really is. And that's all AI can do. Regurgitate info that roughly sounds like what you want to hear. Any AI image is just a meaningless collection of other artists' work slopped together in a way that might look roughly like what you want, but without any of the choices that make art interesting. No human element. Just bland, featureless faces without a single ounce of character. It's a theft machine, draining resources that could be used so much better elsewhere, while all at the same time adding art that adds no real purpose or value to the world. Hi, Editor Jack here. When I found this fucking terrible Superman vs. Wolverine AI video, something that just kept making me laugh was the fact that Wolverine's scream is for some reason in time with the music. I don't understand why. I guess the AI couldn't tell the difference between the scream and the music in the background. Anyway, awesome stuff. This fucking sucks. If you make AI art, go fuck yourself. Bye. Later, Diana 2 decides she needs her own prisoner, and she takes a local writer hostage, forcing him to write like Alan Wake, hoping that imitation will work better coming from a real person.
People can be calibrated just like a machine. You simply have to push the right buttons.
But what she fails to understand is just replicating the art is useless. When passion, care, and purpose isn't there, you're left with nothing. You have nothing. And so the Marmonts failed in their mission. In a way. And this is where we enter speculation station, as all of this is kind of up for interpretation. But I think I'm right. See, Alan doesn't just have the ability to affect the world around him, but the people, their history, their emotions. And in one of Lane's first works, he painted a single page in the middle of the street. I think he called on Alan for help. He changed the world so that Alan would know about his situation and write him a page. And Alan got mad. Alan began to write, not only about the facility and what was happening, but about the Marmonts. He described how they would drift apart, resent each other, eventually even hate one another.
Gradually, thoughts fell into their heads like drops of dark water. Why does she get all the credit? Why does he get any credit?
I think it was a punishment for what they were doing, and it was what they deserved. After Lane's death, Jules had a work that was full of emotion and passion, just like he wanted. But it was nothing but vitriol and hatred. But Jules didn't care what the art meant, just that it served his own greed. Just so he could one-up his own wife. But Diana had other ideas. She discovered the pages Jules had been hiding from her, and she was furious.
Oh, and he's reportedly misplaced the manuscript pages I need for my work. Suddenly, the exact pages that I need to reference have just vanished. He is actively impeding critical bureau research.
It was only fair that she messed up his big experiment in return, right?
If he can do that, then what is stopping me from going down to that lab? And I don't know, just inverting the amplifiers or misaligning the receivers or both. It's the same thing in principle.
But what Diana didn't know is that removing the safety measures, allowing Lane's hate to mix with the power and shadows of the lake, led to their demise. She released this energy through the facility. It killed Jules first, the man in the white coat that had been its tormentor. It corrupted him, turning him into a shadow version of himself, before it made its way through the facility, and finally, to Diana. As she reflected everything that had happened.
I think Diana will find the question very interesting.
Everything the pages had predicted.
Most likely, she already has an answer.
Everything her and Jules had become.
That's why I love her.
As either a gift or a punishment.
In the brief moment before it all went dark, she thought of Jules' smile.
Working together, maybe the Marmonts could have figured out what art really is. But I doubt it. One of my favourite moments from the DLC was the mood board that describes what members of the facility think an artist is. Which, hey, Alan Wake 2 confirms that only the left can make good art. Good job, Alan Wake. They fundamentally misunderstand what the art and the artist really is. It's a vision. It's evocative. It's trying to tell you something, or even just make you feel. Hell, even Alan Wake himself sometimes misunderstands this. The spin-off and the other DLC pack for Alan Wake 2 explores failed escape attempts, where Alan attempted to write a story to escape, but he was just using it as a means to an end. Not something he was really passionate about, not something he could believe, or something that he could attach real, genuine emotion to, so they failed.
I have a shotgun.
Well, I gotta... Wait, is that That's a real shotgun?
But that's a story for another day. I think it's important to mention the company that made this game, Remedy Entertainment, and their creative director, Sam Lake. Their dedication to expressing and defending art in all its forms, with collaborations from musicians, not just for chapter songs, but actively having them play a part in the story, exploring what it means to be a writer and artist in this ever-changing world. For the love of God, please don't be bad. Please don't be bad. Oh fuck, please don't be bad. Alan Wake 2 is my favorite game ever made, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. Or at least not until Alan Wake 3 comes out soon, please and thank you. And with companies exploring generative AI to assist and eventually replace artists, when AI artwork floods storefronts and overcrowds the internet, not allowing a new artist to break through, when YouTube videos can be generated in minutes, drowning real creators trying to share their passion and work. Like and subscribe, please! In the future, I hope that real artists are still given an opportunity to show what real art is about. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you liked it. Please share this around. I feel like the Lakehouse really went under the radar. Alan Wake 2 as a whole kind of went under the radar. If you take anything from this video, buy and play Alan Wake 2, please. Also, like and subscribe and stuff. That would be really cool. Share with a friend, you know, do all the things. And as much as I do not want to say goodbye, I hope to see you in the donut hole once again. Thank you very much, nameless YouTube commenter, for those really incredible, terrible donut puns for my outro. If you have a suggestion of an outro, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to keep saying that I'll see you in the donut hole, and I'll catch you later. Also, a massive thank you to the YouTube channel Champions of Light, where I was able to get all of the raw footage from the game. The link is in the description.